Hello, my fellow nerds, and welcome to another episode of Comic Cave. I'm your host, DnDWife, here with my co-host and partner in adventure, DM Eguile.
How's it going, everyone? We got a special episode today, and we're diving into the next comic from our Traveler series, Drexla and the Mysterious Substance.
But what makes today even more exciting is our special guest. Joining us is the incredibly talented artist behind Drexla's look and all her dynamic moves. Please welcome digital artist and fellow player of Extraeus, EntLynk.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here and to share the fun process behind this latest comic.
Yeah, we'll be breaking down all the elements that went into this comic. Drexla flying through Captain V's ship, her discovery of that glowing blue powder, and the mind-blowing math equations that take over. And EntLynk, you've added so much magic to this scene.
Thank you. Your words are too kind. We're going to talk all about the inspiration behind the art, how the collaboration came together, like table to art, and some of the challenges and tricks that went into making the comic itself. So I hope this is going to be a really good discussion.
Yeah, so grab your brushes or styluses and let's dive into the story behind Drexla and the mysterious substance with our guest EntLynk. So, jumping right in, we obviously want to know, what does this piece look like? What is Drexla and the mysterious substance have to offer for us? The first panel is just really nice and innocuous. It's just this tiny little fairy sort of flitting about a sort of open room. There's some boxes and shelves and bags, hidden, stashed in places. And so, we don't really understand quite where she is. It's all very dark and muddy because it's it's in an enclosed area. We don't really see a lot, but what we do see is, some things that are stored perhaps.
Yeah, we can kind of see into the second panel. It's definitely a storeroom. Yeah. We had hints in the first panel, and then now on the second panel we see that there's crates and barrels and broken boxes, which call back to a previous comic where we see a couple characters busting out of those boxes.
Right.
But Drexla's none the wiser, so she's like, what happened here? She's got to kind of go close and investigate.
Yeah, she doesn't quite know what's going on yet. So, she flies over, she sees the boxes. Some of them are not touched. They don't have any holes in them. So she goes to open one, and there's something glowing in there. We don't quite know what it is yet, but there's little poofs of things coming out. And then when she finally gets that lid off of the box, all of this glowing blue dust comes just poofing out in her face, engulfing her entire head basically in this glowing powder. So she's just trying to not cough up a storm right now.
Yeah, she's got the goggles, but she doesn't have an entire face apparatus. So she has
breathing protection.
Yeah, she's got no choice but to just breathe the air here now that it's all blue. But we can see in the last panel that she's it's giving her some kind of inspiration. This is obviously the inventor type character, so she's getting all this rush of ideas. The math is mathing,
I mean, her class literally is inventor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
She looks super cool. I think it's fun that, the blue powder came up and now it's in her goggles. It's in her eyes. So it's all, she's lit up with it.
She is one with the powder.
Yeah, absolutely.
What will she do with it?
But, it's really interesting to see all this play out in basically what is one page, all of these different panels. And it goes from something so simple to this really dynamic experience where it's unique. She doesn't quite know what's going on. And all of a sudden, boom, there's just this flood of ideas and things going on. And she just can't even fathom what's going on right now because she can't even trust herself.
Yeah, I really appreciate that actually, because this is my first kind of comic that I really feel looks like a regular comic. I wanted to play with drawing backgrounds more, doing them myself. Her being a fairy really helps out with dynamic angles and stuff. So dynamic camera angles. I have a lot more freedom with that for Drexla. And the color palette, I definitely it just makes me so happy to hear your description of it, because that's what I wanted, was that it builds the more color in each sequential panel is like building up like for what this substance is, and like, you know, the mystique added to it.
And it also shows like how out of hand it can get if you're not careful. This powder can just get everywhere, it looks like, and just cover the whole place.
Right. It's very foreboding for like, you know, what could she do with this in the future? And, you know, it's been super fun to see that play out at the table as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I also love that the equations are in the same blue as the powder, so it almost looks like she's been drawing it in the powder and just like making her equations.
I love that. Like they're rushing so fast that she has to get them down now, so she's in the hull of the ship just like jotting everything
like, to
down.
her, it just looks like scrolling through her brain, but she's really just sitting there like writing it all out in the powder. So I just thought that was fantastic. It really adds depth to the whole you know, scenario. At first it's just really innocuous, and then it turns into this fun little adventure, which I always
That's
appreciate.
so awesome to hear. I'm really glad that it reads that way. But yeah, really love the different like starting from afar and then increasingly going like closer to her face, like closer to the emotional impact of the scene and stuff like that.
I thought that was just so cool. In the first panel, all you really see is like a very, obviously because she's far away, it's a rudimentary version of Drexla, and it's really almost like a butterfly or a bee flying in the distance, right? They're just flitting around. And she's even got the little trail behind her that shows like where she's been. I love the flying aspect that Drexla brings to this whole campaign, and especially the panels that you know include her in. I think it just gives her dynamic movement, especially with flying. It really gives her like a 360 mode of movement versus those of us who are stuck walking for now. That we only have that sort of horizontal you know, plane to walk on and pose on, where she can really be all over the place in these panels.
Totally. It does grant a lot of freedom. The far off shots with Drexla is because I can kind of, especially in the second panel, I'm really satisfied with the way that I can put a lot of her in there. Like she's got like the very inquisitive pose, but it's from behind and it's from up top, so you can really get the lay of the room as well. Like you're seeing what she sees,
right, in her perspective. It's huge in her. It's not as big for those of us that are a little bigger, but for her it's this huge cavernous
because if it
area.
was any of the other characters in this scene, it would have been like maybe the back quarter panel of their face, maybe some shoulder,
it would have been cramped.
You would just be looking over their shoulder, which is really effective, you know, on its own, but it's just a lot more satisfying when you can fit like the most of the character, because it's at this weird angle. She's up in the air.
That is true. And in the previous panels we have seen, when Bricky and Bogbean first broke out, they were much bigger compared to the boxes they were in, so it really shows the contrast in the space. We're seeing it from Drexla's perspective, which is so cool and so much fun. I also love this perspective in like the second to last panel where like one of her eyes is closed. It adds so much it's just so much emotion in one little gesture. Like you could have left both of her eyes open and it, you know, nobody would have been like, oh, she didn't do one little detail. It would have been just as complete, but adding that little just closed eye is perfect. It shows exactly what she's feeling in that moment. It's just like, oof, what's going on here? What's coming in at me?
I mean, you and I are very much like anime fans, and I feel like that definitely comes out in my art a lot, is like the kind of little anime tropes. So I feel like that's definitely where that came from.
Frustrations. But so obviously, since you know you guys go on that, so I have a question to pose to two of you,
sure.
Because it's different perspectives. So in the case of you, DnDWife, what is kind of the favorite panel or whatnot as a viewer, right? You had nothing to do with it artistically.
True.
And then for you, EntLynk, what is the favorite part as the artist, not as the viewer? So it has I would imagine nothing to do with the story, but where was your either your hardest part, the one you overcame in the scene itself? So I think that gives a kind of a unique perspective. So DnDWife, if you want to start.
Absolutely. As a viewer, since I had no part in making this particular piece, the last panel is gonna be obviously the most eye-catching of them all. It's got not just the glowing blue powder everywhere. It's got all of the equations going on. She's also not just got one text bubble, but three. So many ideas. Oh, I've got it. Oh, I'm gonna draft that real quick. And it's just her like constant. It shows the way that her brain is accelerating in that moment with the effects of the blue powder. It's so much fun. I already mentioned this, but the glow in the eyes just really shows, I think, how much the blue powder has affected her, and shows that this is sort of the consequences of inhaling this sort of, unique substance. So she's definitely going to find something to contend with. And it just makes me want to find out what happens next. Will she continue maybe trying to use this blue powder to give her these amazing ideas? What's going to happen next? So I want, it makes me want to see what the next comic panel is going to show.
Thank you so much for that feedback. That's like so awesome. I did intentionally do that where it was like very simple and understated, and then like everything's happening in the last panel.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, even though the last panel is the climax and is so like busy and detailed, I think my favorite panel as like the artist behind it is probably the second one, just because it's a really fun angle. Drawing characters from behind is always like weird, because it's like, okay, like some characters wear like a big heavy coat or a cloak or whatever, so it's like not as detailed. But with Drexla, I really get the opportunity to like, she's got the see-through wings, and she's got all the really cute outfit and the pigtails and stuff. So challenging myself to draw all those details that make sense from behind at the different angle was really satisfying.
That's cool. And you had mentioned something when we spoke about this, the inspiration behind this piece, how something called the math lady meme was your inspiration behind that last panel. Can you explain a little bit?
It's definitely inspired, and it gives kind of the opposite effect as the meme. Because for those who are familiar, the math lady meme is this like confused lady who's like, okay, like what's going on? And then someone overlaid a bunch of math equations to really
a beautiful mind
to really hammer that point home.
Right.
But Drexla here is like the opposite of confused. She's like enlightened, and so she's like running with it. And I thought, what better way to convey that with like the math that must be going on in her head in the background.
That's just appearing all around her. That is so much fun, and I love that it's got such a like more positive spin on it than just like some confused lady.
I'm glad I got the I don't know, the balance for it, because I was like, okay, like, is it too busy? Is it too this? I thought about writing it out myself, but then I was like, it doesn't give that uniform look that I want. So it was actually really cool on the asset store for Clip Studio Paint. Someone made the brush already.
Oh, nice.
So it's kind of like a airbrush effect where like, it just kind of alternates the different equations. So
that's kind of funny.
That
it was
is awesome.
super easy to implement. Yeah.
Hey man, you got to get it where you can, because sometimes doing these little finicky details are really tough.
Just make things easier on yourself. Same reason why like I do like the limited color palette and stuff. Like, find shortcuts. Be nice to yourself.
But I do want to talk about some of the challenges behind this piece, because like all art pieces, we have our struggles with them as artists, Is there anything in particular that was, something that stood out as the most challenging for this piece?
Definitely working on backgrounds. Like, this is it. I've like tried to kind of, half do it like in certain other comics, but I feel like I really have to go in and like actually take a measured effort. And so I think it's really, even from here, like it's definitely improved in my later comics as well. But getting the the things to look like they're existing in the same space, so like I don't know, at the correct angle as well, so that the character in the background, like especially boxes, so that they don't look like they're at like conflicting angles. That's definitely a challenge.
That's true, to have bunched up things that look like they're supposed to be there.
I don't want it to look like they're just like copy pasted, but at the same time, like kind of like, this is what started me on like, okay, I really do need to like work on perspective and stuff. So I bought a perspective book, and it's been kind of like, it was eye-opening, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and do this, and it's challenging. This is how I've been able to pinpoint, this is what I need to work on. These are the things that will improve, or I have to actually like go in because they are the most challenging.
So you're saying it gave you a better perspective?
Hard. Had Had
I had
to.
to. It was
Obligatory.
Low hanging fruit.
Gotta have the dad joke in there. Well, that's really cool to see how, you've come a long way through the backgrounds. I know for a few of the earlier panels, you'd use some of the 3D assets just because it's like, I need something to stand in and to help me. And also we were working on them. You were working on them quite, quickly. So it was tough to sit there and work on a fully detailed background as well as fully detailed characters.
Definitely. And like the 3D assets are really nice to like start out, especially like to get like a baseline to like excuse me. But like even just to find your horizon line. I'm trying to learn the lingo. You know what I mean? Like good. Just trying to like set it, and that way everything else like follows along that same line, like that same perspective. But yeah, it is nice to kind of like let go of the constraints of the 3D objects. But nice. Now, even in like later comics that I'm currently working on, I think I really need to start drawing the backgrounds first, because I do like drawing the characters first, because that's what I'll sketch in my like sketchbook that I will then like take a photo of and port into. I'll like draw on top of it in digital. But the backgrounds really matter, because then
that's true.
At that point I can just have the background done instead of like always finagling if I need to move a character. Because that way I would eventually make it easier on myself by being able to move the character on a separate layer instead of like cutting it out. Yeah, exactly.
That makes it easier to adjust it based on the background, right? So
yeah.
you find like the best space.
The background doesn't move, or I can use it, or I can edit it separately because it's on its own layer.
I mean, how much does that open up for like future like animation too, right?
Exactly. Like it just makes everything so much easier, because then you don't have to be like, oh well, now I've decided that I want to animate this. Now I have to jump through all the hoops of like in each panel separating the character and redrawing the background to make it look like it makes sense.
Feel what they
that is tough.
That makes a lot of sense.
So this definitely got the ball rolling in my mind about like, okay, these are some things that I need to work on, because I'm really happy with how it came out, but it's definitely like I take notice of the stuff that was the most challenging for me, and I got to run with it.
That's really cool. You always learn, and that's always the goal as an artist. Is every piece is just another learning sort of moment for us.
Exactly.
I've done ones where I do the character work first and then the background. So having that perspective is actually really good advice for future pieces and for working on artwork later, which I really appreciate. And then I also wanted to talk about some of the flying perspectives in this, because we had spoken a little bit about how challenging it is to draw a flying character, because they have a 360 degrees of motion complete for them. So what was the challenge, I guess, in drawing Drexla, like you said, not just flitting around, but from a faraway perspective and close, but also just in general placement?
Yeah, definitely. Like that's been something I'm learning as I go, is with such a small character, trying to like make her general form and details like readable, but also like I can't be zoomed in 2000% and drawing everything, all the
details,
just so that it's just so that you're zoomed out and you're like, okay, well she looks like a speck or whatever. So definitely trying to just get like the main details in, but also look like she's not just hanging out, I guess.
Some doll, a twig doll,
or she's just being rotated in like 30 degrees in every kind of movement. It's like, look, she's going around in a circle.
So I definitely think that like doing simpler forms, very loose, keeping it loose like in the like planning stages helps. Just so I'm not putting in like a whole lot of effort for something that's going to be like simple and viewed from far away.
And it's meant to not be so.
Exactly. But I think it's a double-edged oh my god, I almost said double-edged coin, but whatever.
Technically,
you know what I mean.
It's not wrong.
But it also grants like certain positives where, like we've said before, like you can rotate her in a 360 and it makes sense, because like it's wherever wherever the camera is.
Right.
So I do get a little bit more freedom as a trade-off, where in the close-up scenes, like I can do whatever works. Like I can just decide on the background or whatever
like a
first.
Person in the close-up scenes.
Exactly.
So your perspective can be just as if you were drawing one of us, one of our other characters. That's really interesting. it can be. I can see how challenging it could be. I like the notion of like the simplicity for farther away perspectives, just because like I think like manga writers or artists have to do the same thing, or animator artists have to do the same thing, where they can't always give their main characters like all of the details. If they're far away, they just sort of do the gist.
It is definitely like heartwarming to see like the memes of like, you know, like the background characters in anime where they zoom in where it's not meant to be and they look like so derpy. It's so cute.
It's like I could literally count the pixels in this guy's face.
Right, it's just like two dots and a smiley.
Sometimes they're cross-eyed.
Yes, but then when you zoom out, it's like, oh yay,
It
like
works.
that looks great.
Yeah.
Because your eye isn't necessarily focusing in the same way that you would if you were like really honed in on it.
Yeah, because you're meant to be focusing on whatever the main subject of the piece is, not the background.
Definitely, like thinking about the viewer's focus and like what's that word? Composition. Thinking about that is also helpful, and I think has made my comics a little better as they go on. Just because, like, same with the like limited color palette.
Yeah,
like,
I saw that a lot of the comics that we've done a few full color ones, but the ones that we've done most are these sort of very limited palette ones, which I will say give this sort of very poignant look to the pieces, just because you can really see what's important.
Thank you. I'm glad that it's like received well, because like part of my perfectionist brain is like, wow, you're not doing enough, like it's not perfect, it's not, if it's not full color, it's not finished. But that's totally not the case. And I feel like it almost helps direct the person's eye and also storytell, because like, you know, in this one especially, it works very well that like you're not really seeing as much blue until like the full force of the substance is taking effect, and she's just enveloped in it.
Yeah, until she's fully opened that box.
So I think it really helps to, one, tell a story, and two, like direct the viewer's eye line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also helps that we're in the hull of a ship, so it's supposed to be darker, and you're not seeing things very clearly. So even in some of the backgrounds, it's just very like muted colors for her.
It's just, you know, four walls. It's not like a whole landscape is in the background.
You know, at least for the limited color palette, we have most of this is in grayscale. It's just the black and white with some really awesome shading and gradient effects, and then we have obviously the blue of the glowing powder. Can you explain first of all, how you chose that for the color, and also how it kind of serves to bring the whole piece together?
I definitely started with like something bright and saturated. I'm not sure if it was subliminally like, V is this dealer, so maybe he's got like a lot of blue. I don't know. Maybe he put some dye in there.
Is it Breaking Bad? Is that what got you?
It's like, yeah, that's the quality of it, you know, obviously.
He's got to color match his substances.
I mean, I think we did make like V Heisenberg jokes. So
yeah, we did.
Yeah, it totally fits. But yeah, I think I didn't give too much thought into the blue, and it could totally like, with the digital settings and layers, that's the beautiful part, is that if I wanted to go in and make it like prismatic or something, you could totally do that.
Absolutely. You can change it up. I love that we go from this very muted sort of look to then this explosion of color. I think in an art piece, it works really well to not just direct your eye to the more important aspects of the piece, but also to set the tone and the mood of the piece without having to just put everything in color necessarily.
Absolutely.
It shows you don't always need to go full color to convey a really good piece of artwork.
Totally. Because even like there are certain like, you know, you could make something in full color, but if you're lacking the, you know, your depth of value, the contrast, like it's still going to give that same unfinished effect. But I really do like, I appreciate your comments on the atmosphere, just because like, I wanted to mix up the blue instead of making it just one note. So I do kind of layer the saturation of the, like that like smoky effect that it gives. Yeah. And even like for her goggles, it's kind of like a illuminated blue.
Yeah, I do see that.
That's what's really cool about like I think it's like an add glow layer layered on top of like a regular one. So it really kind of gives more variation, even though you are using a limited color palette.
Yeah, because even though you are only using one technical color, it's all these variants of blue that really add depth and texture. Like you said, it adds a little bit of glow effect as well as that sort of airy, smoky poof sort of effect of the dust. So it's a way to convey all the different moods in the panels without really having to deviate too much from your color palette and having to go too crazy with it, which is nice.
Like even like as we said before, like it really kind of just works with the whole composition. It just really helps to like lead your eye instead of like you know, the viewer is lost or something. Like it really helps to give them a direction.
Right. And speaking of composition, you know, a lot of these in a lot of these panels, Drexla, who is technically speaking the main subject of the whole art piece, she's not in the exact center of a lot of these panels. In fact, she's a little set off to the side because aesthetically, for those who are not, you know, in the art world, aesthetically speaking, you want the subject to be just like a little offset, because having it straight right on is just very, I guess it's just very telling, and anybody can do that. But to really give it this nice artful composition, you want to sort of offset things a little bit and fit everything according to that.
Yeah, that's literally like the first thing that they taught me in like the few like college art classes I took was like, for the love of God, do not put it in the center of the page. Right. Like that was like the one thing they were like, if you leave here with anything, don't put it in the middle.
Right. Not, and there's somewhere there's a place for that. Like in the last panel, Drexla's face is in the center. Now she's not full on front profile. She does have a sort of side profile to this, but she is in the center. She is the main focus, but that's because there's a lot going on with her.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to intention. Like people can kind of tell if your subject is like constantly in the center of the page or the panel. Like that's one thing.
That's too much sometimes.
And then like you can tell if it's intentional, where it's like, you know, for instance, like honing in on Drexla's face, like her reaction to this, you know, whatever's happening. And or like, for example, like one person and then you go to a wide shot where they're in a larger crowd, that's poignant and that kind of says something.
Right.
But if it's just like every single time, like nah, it kind of gets stale.
Yeah, it can serve a purpose to keep them in the same shot or in the same placement, but you don't always want to do that because you want to include some dynamic positioning. That's what gives, you know, good artwork a great artwork sort of rating.
Which I think that also I'll say is also helped out by like confident lines. Confident lines invoke movement. So like if you know, like I don't know, it doesn't have to be
wobbly,
perfect. When you have like really sketchy lines where like the one arc is made up of like 1,000 little hatches, it can serve a purpose if that's your art style. But for the most part, like
you leave that in the sketch layer.
You're not gonna get like a really smooth movement. You're not gonna be able to convey that with really like sketchy lines.
I getcha. That's super interesting because you never really think about that, right? The straightness of the lines you have to draw. People are just like, well, it's artwork. You just do whatever you want, and you know, if you're good at it, it'll come together. It's like no. You have to approach the artwork with a sense of not just purpose, but confidence as well, because if you don't have the confidence that you can portray what you want to, your lines will show that, and then your artwork will show that. It's
definitely like, you know, don't be afraid to like use more of your wrist in it, or like, you know, sometimes if I'm like too zoomed in on something and I find that I don't have like the range of motion on my hand, I'll zoom out, and that's much easier to kind of get a confident stroke in.
Exactly. Or if you maybe shift the page around a little bit, you can get a better angle to where the line is a much more confident. I've done that as well.
I think I don't know if I have it correct, but like I saw someone talk about like you want to push your lines instead of pulling them. Because there's like a certain direction where it's just not as it's much more wobbly that way.
Now I know a lot of that has to do with like the stability of the brush settings in Clip Studio.
Everyone's got their happy place.
I've heard a lot on the Clip Studio Reddit that it should be set to 0 just to avoid any stabilization wobbles.
Sometimes it does get in the way. Like I find that like depending on certain brushes, it can give a different effect.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I'm really frustrated and I like can't get it myself, I'm like, all right, I'm turning this stabilization up.
right. And then one of the last things I wanted to sort of bring up was the dynamic nature of the gestures in this and how important they are to composition in a piece of art, because, you know, putting a person or whoever your subject is in a panel or in a portrait, are you just going to have them with their hands to their side, standing, staring straight forward? No, you want to include some emotion behind that. You want to show that they're a person. So how did you, I guess, portray the beingness that is Drexla?
I guess I did start with like the emotions, because like even to take off of what you were saying, like it's definitely you want to show and not tell. Like I would much rather have like more emphasis on like the art or more space even for the art versus just like, you know, this isn't Hunter x Hunter. I'm not gonna have like 1,000 words on this little page, and it's like there's barely room for like their face to be drawn. Like
we can write a book if that's what we want.
Right. Yeah. But like I definitely wanted to like there's little hints in like the VFX, like kind of or not VFX, SFX, where it's like sneak, you know, stuff like that, or like a thud for the box lid falling. But I definitely wanted to like convey a lot with her like facial expression, but also like I think that's also why the second panel is my favorite, just because like she almost looks like she's like stopped midair.
Yeah, it's like a double take almost.
Yeah, she's like and she's like finagling with her goggles to like kind of pull them down, and so she's like, all right, I need to go investigate this farther. So I wanted to show more in like the body language versus like just having walls of text
having
there.
to tell us. You know, it's really cool, and that's the point of art, to show, not to tell. You should be able, like they say, right, a picture's worth 1,000 words. You should be able to show everything you want to say in the one piece of art that you show. If you have to explain it, then it's not really serving its purpose. Or at least that's a few of the schools of thought out there. You know, everyone has their opinion.
You should at least be able to get like the gist from it without the text.
The message that you're trying to receive. It should, you know, you should be able to read that from the piece. So it's definitely important to have those gestures in there. And that wraps up our deep dive into Drexla and the mysterious substance. We hope you enjoyed this behind the scenes look at how we brought Drexla's latest adventure to life.
And also a huge thank to our amazing guest EntLynk for sharing all the creative magic that went into this comic. It was really great hearing about all your processes.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun to like kind of discuss and dissect all this stuff with both like, you know, we got the DM layman over here, and then we've got my fellow artists. Like, we got all perspectives on it.
Right. And my fellow nerds, if you love this episode, don't forget to check out the artwork over on our Couple of Nerds Discord. We've posted the full comic so you can see all the details we talked about today.
Plus, if you want to share your own art and have ideas for future episodes, join our Discord and become part of the conversation. We love hearing from all of you.
And don't forget to follow us on our Couple of Nerds YouTube channel, where we'll be posting a special video showcasing Drexla and the mysterious substance with commentary from us and EntLynk. You won't want to miss it.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It helps us out tremendously.
Thanks for tuning in to Comic Cave. Until next time, keep creating, keep dreaming, and stay nerdy. See you all next time.
Have a good one.